Hi guys, welcome back to Coder. I'm so excited today because we are releasing and we are premiering a new course on our channel. Today we are releasing a JavaScript crash course. It's gonna be a series that will go on forever. I'm pretty sure that this course is gonna answer pretty much most of the questions I've been getting on the channel from you guys about concerns and things that blow your mind or you want to see me doing in any particular project. I have delivered, so please take a second. If you're watching this video, if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider subscribing because that helps the channel grow. It also helps the YouTube algorithm to show that I'm doing some great job and it's helping people out there to understand the weird parts of JavaScript. Without further ado, let's get into it. Before we move forward, I would like to request you guys to go ahead and follow up with the community, Coder on Instagram, Coder on Twitter. Please go ahead and follow the page, send in your messages. I'll be answering each and every one of you and helping you guys out on the weird parts of JavaScript. Let's get into the project. Hey guys, before you is just a simple HTML template. We do have a header, actually two headers, the header 2, header 3, and a simple form. The simple form contains an input tag element and a button. If you are curious about the CSS flexbox styling, please go ahead and go to the channel, look for the CSS crash course playlist, and then watch everything. So in today's project, we're going to be asking for a client to enter in their name, and then as soon as they press the submit button, they will get a hello message. So you can see right now that that's a simple form with all the placeholders and the button in it. I'm just testing to see how the thank you message will be displayed. And then the name of the customer, I'll take it out and then link that into a span tag. And then later on, tap onto that ID of the span tag in the JavaScript. So here we are trying to get the ID of the name of the customer. And then the way we do that is that in the latest JavaScript version, you can literally just use const, which is like a permanent declaration of a data type. So you can use let. So let is like any variable. So let replaces the var, and then const is pretty much anything that is a constant. This is how we want to get the data in that greeting message. So whenever you want to get data from an HTML tag, always give IDs or classes to that particular tag. Then that way you can later on use JavaScript to get to that tag. This will make sense shortly. So how we do this is that, remember the ID we gave to the tag, the name where we wanted the hello name. So we give an ID to the span. So right now we are trying to get to that ID, and how we do that, ES6+ gives us the advantage of using either a const or a let. So a let is like replacing the var of classic JavaScript, and const is like the constant. So since here we're not going to be adding numbers and stuff, we're going to be dealing with strings, we can literally just use constants. So we shall say constant document.getElement by ID, because we're trying to manipulate the document in the DOM of the HTML template. And then inside we shall write the name of the ID that we want to get. Also, other alternatives are using a class. If you give a class to that element tag, you could replace document.getElement by ID with document.getElement by class name. Or you can use document.querySelector all if you're getting an ID inside the quotes. Inside the quotes, remember, if you're getting an ID, you need to add a hashtag, okay? But if you're getting a class, then you need to add a dot before the name of whatever you're trying to get. Document.querySelector all gets all the classes that are with that name. We also have, if you want to get a particular class, then you can use document.querySelector, and then inside the quotes you just write, if you're getting an ID, use a hashtag greeting or dot greeting if you're getting a class name. Okay, moving forward. So now in the HTML template tag, we do not have the name. Remember, we just have a span tag that is empty. We want to manipulate that span tag and then add data in it. So what we do is we get the greeting because we've already got the ID. So now JavaScript knows this variable we have created in the memory of JavaScript. Okay, so now in memory we do have that variable, and at the moment it's empty. So to assign something to that variable, okay, we can use greeting.textContent. We're gonna be adding the text content that we want to be assigned in the span tag. We can also use greeting.innerText, okay? Greeting.innerText. So the difference, you'll be wondering the difference between the two. Greeting.innerText, okay, just takes all the text as it is, the way you've assigned it in JavaScript. That's how it's gonna be. However, with text content, it comes with everything, all the styling. Moving forward, so if we assign the name mkslekota, of which you should take a moment to subscribe right now. Remember, in the span element, we do not have that. We're just manipulating the HTML tag, span tag, okay? We do not have that element. If you try to view, we do not have that element. However, we can manipulate the DOM using JavaScript. We can add that data into the span tag using the greeting.textContent. You can also test the kind of data you are producing with your assigned variables by inspecting the page and going to console. You can see that data honestly showing up. However, remember that console.log, whatever you put in quotes, is gonna be output as a string, but if it's a variable, then it will be shown as a variable. We shall see that console.log will output that data because we have already assigned the name to greeting.text. Then greeting.text in memory has it that the name should be mkslekota. So now we can console log and get that name in the console. We're trying to get the values of the input, and how we do that, the same thing. We're getting the element by ID, name. The ID to the input type is name, and that's what we want to get into. So the same thing, we're gonna be doing the same thing. So const name input document.get element by ID name, and then now to get the value that is in that input, we honestly just use name input dot value. So here what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the greeting, the name, whatever name the customer has entered, and then assigning it to the greeting.text. So if you get the value attribute, if you say name.value, you've already gained access to whatever is being typed into the input type. Then what I'm doing is that I'm assigning that to the greeting text. So now whatever you enter into the input type will be pushed onto the hello blah 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 name. So now I can go ahead and push the greeting just after the form. My intention is that I want to hide the form. Immediately the customer enters the name and then they press submit, and then the name will pop up just down below as a message and the form will disappear because they don't need it anymore. So now I want to sort of like gain access. So right now you can see that if somebody enters the name, if you enter the name into the input type, I have access to the input type. So if you enter the name can be concatenated onto the message. So what I want to do, my next step right now is gaining access to the button. That way, if you enter the name, then press the submit button, that's when the name will show up in the prompt message, in the thank you message. And in that case, whenever you're dealing with buttons, you can use event listeners, something that I'm introducing as a new topic. And you will be using event listeners all the time if you're dealing with manipulating the DOM. So I'll also be introducing a new topic here, which are functions. Functions are really important when you're writing your JavaScript because they help you modularize your project. You can set up a function somewhere, then call upon that function to be executed to do something. So whenever you think of a function, it's like a method you're commanding the computer to do something. So right now we have gained access to the submit button, the same way we've been accessing all the other IDs. And the next thing is to manipulate that submit button by adding an event listener. What we're gonna do is submit that add event listener, and then that event listener is gonna be a click because we want to listen to clicks whenever a user clicks on that submit button. And then the next variable or the next argument is a function. So you can write an arrow function or you can write classic functions. Another way to do this is that you can write the function outside this and then call that function within this function. However, since we are starting as a starter course, as a beginner course, let's write this function within this event listener because we're just gonna use it once. If you're gonna use this function in several buttons, then you're better off writing this function outside than just call it every single event listener that you intend to use that function in. Hope that makes sense. So inside that function, we want to assign whatever we want to happen. So what do we want? We want the value in the input type to be assigned to the greeting message. If the user types in their name will be assigned to the greeting message. To make things more fancy right now, I'm gonna gain access to the form and then make sure that that form is hidden when the user presses the button. So let's start with hiding the greeting message first. But remember, the greeting message is just the name. We want to hide the whole message. So we shall need to make some exceptions here and change the names that we made. Remember, just hide the whole greeting starting from the header. I believe it's a header 2 or a header 3. So just go ahead and change the greeting ID to the whole message, and then give the span where we intend the name to be manipulated another name, another ID. So go ahead and give the header 3 an ID of greeting, because we want to hide that whole message, and then give the name where we intend the name to be. Just give it a new name, which is like name. So I give the input a new ID name, which is name input, and then the span ID where the name is, the name, and then the greeting, the whole message, greeting. So I want to hide that greeting initially. Make sure that you change the ID of the input, and then if you want to change the greeting message, remember that greeting is now our name. The one we've been manipulating is our name. Feel free to pause and follow along, because I'm making some exceptions here and changing a few things. That greeting is our name. That's what we've been manipulating all along. If you want to change wherever there is that greeting message, if you're on Mac, just go ahead and press Command F for find, and then Option Enter for each and every name that you just found. Then type the new name that you want. That will find every single name that aligns with whatever you found to switch to the new name. Our greeting is now gonna change to name. That's the span tag. And then we are gonna create a new ID for greeting, which is the whole header 3. So we want to hide that whole greeting. Make sure you fix whatever variable that needs to be fixed. Feel free to pause. So now we need to gain access to the greeting message, and we need to gain access to it again by documenting the element by ID greeting. Again, the usual const greeting, which is the header 3. Document the get element by ID greeting. So now initially we are going to be hiding it. Here in JavaScript you can also use CSS, but it's not as strong as using CSS. If you want to use a lot of CSS in JavaScript, I wouldn't advise you to do that. Just use CSS on just simple things that you want to manipulate. So if you want to use CSS in JavaScript, just use greeting, which is the variable .style. Let JavaScript know that we're getting into CSS, then display. If you want color, you'd say style.color. If you want background color, you would say style.background color, but as one word and in camel case. So now we've hidden the greeting message, and then we're gonna get into the function in our event listener, and then change that style to flex. That way, when the user presses the submit button, that's when the message should display. And in future, we're gonna also update the form as well to switch to display none as soon as the user presses the submit button, because at that point we don't need the form anymore. You can go ahead and also upgrade this project, make it your own, and display it in whichever way you want. So on bigger projects, you can also send this data to a JSON file or a database. You can play around. So if you know these simple things, you can build with these to build bigger projects. So now we want to hide the form. Same thing, we feel free to use document.get element by class name, or you can stick to the ID if you're comfortable with that. I usually use the IDs because they are more superior. So here the name is too close to the hello message. I want to add a hex code that gives space between them. You can use CSS to do that. However, there's a shorter way with no hassle. You can use a hex code to give space between the two. So now we are getting the form because we want to manipulate it and hide it as soon as the user presses submit. So we shall need to get access to it using JavaScript, giving it a variable of form and getting the ID from data. Remember that this ID does not exist yet. We only have a class name. So this was our simple project. This is something that I'm going to continue doing for the next couple of series. Feel free to subscribe, like, comment, and share any ideas on my social platforms that you want me to talk about in JavaScript. I'm excited and I look forward to read through your questions and work on particular problems that you're facing. Perfect. So this works as expected. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and also follow up on our social media platforms. The community is growing. As always, I hope to see you soon in the next video. Be sure to subscribe. Bye bye.